Next, we have Dr. Rachelle. Doctor, are you ready? The
Yeah,
time is yours.
the doctor is ready. Thank you so much. No, it's awesome to listen to everybody sharing ideas. So, uh, the idea that I'm going to share with you, it's over the years, I have always said, like, yeah, I wish I knew that. Oh, I wish I would have done that. And it's so funny when people ask me about things. I'm like, yeah, I thought I was doing that, but nope, totally wasn't. Had no clue, not an expert, all of the above. And so, what really was a game changer for me was about, and I wrote an article about this, and I had to think back how long ago it was, but I looked at the rows of desks in my room. And it was like 5 minutes before the start of my Spanish 2 class. I had like 28 or 30 students lined up in rows. The relationships weren't that great. I'd stand at the door, I'd hear them coming in, the conversations, their interaction, socialization. I was just like, okay, that's bad. And then if students were in the back of the classroom, learning, I teach fully Spanish, but I also teach an emerging technology course, but specifically Spanish or any language, there's that lack of confidence. And I always say, like, I make mistakes in English all the time, let alone a Spanish, which is my third language. So in September of, I think, 2017, I looked at my room and I was like, I cannot take this anymore. So I just moved the desks, and they're the sled desks. I got a workout that day, I will say, and put them into groups and clusters of 3 and 4. I had a couple of sets of 2 in the middle. I really had no clue what I was doing. I just knew that what was set up was not working, and I would not let the kids in. And they came in and they were like, "What is up with this room? What happened?" I said, "Oh, I did this. Where do we sit? This is." I said, "Sit wherever you want." And when they sat down, they, of course, sat by their friends, and they said, "Well, what are we doing today?" I'm like, "I did not get that far because I only had 5 minutes to move the furniture." So I said, "Just give me a minute." And I thought about the different things I had been doing in my classroom, whether I was writing on the board, I was having them do an activity, having conversations, playing a game. And this is all all the cool things, like before I started to get them using or creating sidekicks and using School AI a little over 2 years ago now, I think. And so it didn't take much time for them to come back to me. And I'm the only Spanish teacher. And they would say, I really like Spanish a lot better this year. And I'm like, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Like, why? And they said, because you're accessible. I can ask you a question. I feel like I can help my classmates. And after about 5 or 6 weeks, once I started to figure it out, one of the students came to me after school and said, I just want you to know, I feel like I'm actually part of a learning community. And I thought that was huge. And even throughout the year, like those relationships, the students just, I felt like I knew where every kid was in the learning process every day. I had more interactions with each of them, even though they were doing a lot of the work. And so coming up with ideas for stations, honestly, full transparency, sometimes I'd be like, okay, here's this stuff. Figure out a way to practice, verbs, vocab, or whatever. And, now flash forward, like when I've done that, I have set up opportunities for them to use School AI. And students had actually contributed to an article about AI literacy about a year and a half ago. And I'll drop this into the chat if you want to see, because I learned a lot that year. I learned about the power of, letting go, getting out of the front of the room, getting kids in the lead a little bit more, and also what SEL was. Because somebody said, "What are you doing for SEL?" And I went, I don't, what are you doing? Because when they said it, I was like, I don't know what that means. And then they told me, and I thought, okay, I'm doing some of those things in my classroom. But that little shift, even though it caused, a little bit of muscular pain for a couple of days for me after, and I wasn't sure. And I told Dr. Catlin Tucker later on about stations because she obviously expert about it. And she's like, you did it the way that worked for you. You figured it out. And that's what I think it is. You take the risks and you see what happens and you get the kids involved. So that's my little kind of 5 minute shift that made a big impact.